Lisa Leong, and in this new Spotify series, I sit down with brilliant and inspiring Australians to have an unfiltered conversation about all things podcasts. What are they listening to? Why do they enjoy them? And hopefully discover some new podcasts for myself. This is More Than Talk. Today, I'm joined by one of Australia's brightest comedians, Steph Tisdell. As a proud Yidinji woman, her interest in politics and advocacy shines through in her hilarious and award-winning shows. When chatting to her, all of her favourite podcasts were true crime, and I can't wait to dive more into her obsession with this genre. Well, Steph, you are regarded as one of Australia's brightest comedic talents at the moment. Even if you don't believe it, just own it because it sounds really great. But for those who aren't familiar with your particular style and approach to comedy, how would you describe what you do?
I'm just an idiot on stage. Some background as to why I do what I do. Yeah. I originally studied law and journalism. I wanted to get involved in advocacy. Yeah. Dropped out towards more than halfway through and just went, I need to be in a position where people can listen to what I'm going to say. It's important to talk about inequities, and that's just what my experiences have been growing up, but try and be real silly about it, but also a punch in the face.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. I was going to ask you about, law and journalism and sort of where you decided that those things that are still important to you, social inequity and politics, for example, needed to find a different way out of you and a different way for you to creatively express that and to really actually impact change.
All happened totally by accident. So, I had, a million and one dreams of what I was going to do with... I was going to be a human rights lawyer or I was going to be a politician and then you sort of get into it and you go, oh, that's the idealistic view of things, the reality of getting to that position. You have to succeed within the system that you essentially want to dismantle, and do I have the confidence and the patience for that? And it's like, no, not really. As soon as I did comedy, I was like, hold on a second. This is a place where you are really uncensored. Mm-hmm. So if you want to say the stuff, that matters, at least people are listening because it's like an exchange. What's in it for me or what's in it for them is a big laugh.
Let's talk about podcasts because... obviously, that's why we're here. Yeah. And just sort of talking about observations. And one of the observations I had was that, you mentioned that you you sometimes struggle with anxiety. Yeah. Me also. Yeah. And because of that, one of the things that you love to listen to is true crime podcasts because you got to know how it breaks down.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of a bit soothing for you.
It's really fucked up, isn't it? It's really messed up, but it's true. Especially when it has closure. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't want to watch Unsolved Mysteries. I'm not watching that. I'm not going near that.
What happened?
Yeah, what happened? Why don't we know?
Is he still out there?
Exactly. But there's some sort of closure to understanding the warning signs and somebody getting captured and this idea that these people exist out there kind of for an anxious brain is I knew it.
It's like that paranoia and is founded in a situation like that. I was right.
Yes.
How would you describe yourself as a podcast person? Do you listen to them every day? Do you listen to them when you're getting ready for a gig to get in the zone? Eating ice cream.
What happened, no, my favourite place to listen to them is driving, and I drive a lot. Driving is my number one thing. Yeah. So I'll always have a podcast on in the car. Yeah.
Who got you into true crime podcasts? How did that happen?
Serial.
Serial. I feel like that was very much the intro for a lot of people because it was huge. I mean, and still is.
Huge, massive. Yeah. And my brother was like, oh my God, you got to listen to this. He goes, I'm going to stop listening to it for a couple of weeks. I need you to catch up. Yeah. Because we need to discuss, did he do it or not? And so it became this really bonding thing for me and my brother. He was like, I'm listening to this other podcast. So it was our little thing for a little while.
I love that.
Yeah. There's a podcast that I love called RedHanded, and that's probably...
Yes, they're super funny. The two hosts from RedHanded are super funny.
And super smart.
And super smart. And what I love is how well researched it is, but also how funny and off the cuff they are as presenters. How much of it do you think is the way the story is told versus the actual excuse my choice of words, but the guts of the story?
That's actually such a cool question, because the very opposite is also one of my favourite podcasts, so Casefile.
Yeah.
Which is, there is no personality in how that's told.
It's very clinical and very kind of straightforward, which is stylistically the
absolutely.
opposite. Yeah.
What I like about RedHanded is they feel familiar to me in terms of they go off on tangents and they bring it back, and it's relatable, because I feel like I'm that
smart
kind of
girlfriends.
Yeah.
Like you would have these conversations with anyway, except that they happen to be extremely drenched in death and and mysteries and all of the rest of it.
They're also amazing because they don't steer away from sort of like taboo topics.
For someone who is very story-driven, what is it about Casefile that you like?
There's no opinions. It's not opinion-based.
It's fact.
As a person who not only enjoys stories but is a storyteller, I think there's something about the contrast of those two things.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's something about kind of having the facts and being able to then have completely my own opinions.
Yeah.
And feeling like there's no bias, there's no leading. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Speaking of voices and just the Australian voice in general, Cambo Ford, True Crime Island.
Yep.
I mean, there really isn't anything like that particular brand of Australian accent, especially like you've travelled and lived overseas.
Yeah.
When you hear an accent like Cambo Ford's,
I know,
presenting facts in a very broad Australian accent, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I just love it, because you can you can just tell as well. He's like obviously a really smart fella. Like, that, I love that affectation of that is pure storytelling. That's acting. That's performance. And I love that. But I also really like that he's just very engaging, because you're like, this fella's a nutter, but you're still actually learning something. I don't know what it is about true crime that I love, but I'm just fascinated by it.
Can we talk about My Dad Wrote a Porno? Because that was probably one of the earliest podcasts I ever listened to, and I thought it was outrageously funny. And again, it's very character driven and chemistry driven as well, in terms of the three hosts on the show. I always love to know who told you about My Dad Wrote a Porno.
Do you know how I actually learned about this?
I would love to know.
Okay, so my brother got into podcasts before the rest of us.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about this show until, so he said to my dad's very prudish. We're all very prudish. But he said to my dad, Dad, you'll find this really funny. And he said, but I won't listen to it with you, Yeah. And so Dad went and listened to it.
Yeah.
Thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Then, as a joke, what he thought would be funny was if he wrote a porno. So he listened to My Dad Wrote a Porno and then said, I've got an idea. And he wrote a book, and then as a joke, this is what he says, and my dad's like a crazy genius, right?
Yeah.
He wrote this book, sent it off to a publisher.
Where you get it from.
They loved it.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I don't actually want to publish this. And they're like, but we love it. And he's like, no, I'm not actually writing and publishing a porno. Like, I can't do this.
And...
He never published it. I mean, he could have in a suit. I don't know. But he was so embarrassed. He went, and he came all, because he got all shame, and he was like, guys, I wrote a book. And I wrote it because your brother showed me My Dad Wrote a Porno, and it was a porno, and it was a bit of a piss take, but I'm not going to publish it, okay? And we're like, why would you even tell us? Like, just publish it, you weirdo.
My God.
He got really embarrassed about it.
So you can legitimately say, My Dad Wrote a Porno.
Literally, yes. And then that's what made me listen to the show. I was like, my dad wrote a porno because of My Dad Wrote a Porno. I now have to listen to My Dad Wrote a Porno.
That is the greatest flex ever. As an Indigenous woman, as a woman who is blindingly brilliant and very funny and extremely accomplished, what change do you want to see happen in Australia in your lifetime?
The number one thing that I want to see is really broad, but I think it will answer a lot of different things. I think we're heading there anyway. People need to have more empathy. And I think that the way that we do that is to peel back layers. I think it's about authenticity. It's about championing vulnerability. It's about championing voices that we haven't always seen. Like, I write, I act, I perform. And the thing about being a storyteller in general, especially as a person of colour, it's so great that the world's moving the way that it is that my story and your story will be relatable to everyone because they're human stories.
Yep.
But they also have an added layer that makes people feel seen. When things that I don't actually care about in my everyday today, but I think could affect others or contribute to a systemic thing, call it out, even though it's uncomfortable. Like, all of that sort of stuff, I think, grows people's capacity for empathy. And that's what I want to be part of, really.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to take some time off comedy. Yeah. I really want to focus on acting.
Because touring is intense. Like, all my friends that are comedians, the actual touring part of it is what sharpens your skills, but it also takes a lot out of you.
Oh, big time. I think it's also really lonely. I love acting. That's been sort of happening for me recently.
Yeah.
I was saying to the makeup artist earlier, my makeup artist on the last show I was filming was like, anybody who works on set, we're just like carnies. And it's so true. And
It's
you build
true.
like a new family for the period of time.
Yep.
And then it's kind of fleeting, and the connections are so deep and real because they have to be.
Yeah.
And I
the
never
trust
wanna...
has to be there in order for production
100%.
to be great,
Yeah.
you know, and so
Absolutely.
you have to trust that everybody gives as much as you do.
Yeah.
And everybody eggs each other on to be the best that they possibly can be.
100%.
It's a really intense
And communication
bond.
is so important as well. Just places where I can truly create connections. All I want to do is connect with people. And even doing like shit like this. Like, I love this. Just having a yarn.
Same.
You know? Yeah. It's good. I love yarn.
I'm really glad we did this.
Yes, me
thank
too.
you so much.
No, thank you so much.
I think we just wrapped ourselves up. Did we,
We're pretty good.
We
That was
wrapped
pretty good,
ourselves up.
That was pretty good.
Perfect. Yes. Thanks so much for watching. Head over to Spotify to check out a playlist featuring all the podcasts we covered today and more.